Hello, MGTOW. Hello, man. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. So, I want to talk about working your own land. And I also want to talk about some guys that I know, but I'll be quick about it, all right? So, in the old days, long before cities and the Industrial Revolution, a man, a human being, had to work the land. They had to get up every day and start their hustle. And I'm not talking about kings and royalty and stuff like that. I'm just talking about regular people. They had to hustle, okay? And usually they were like on a plot of land or, in a particular area. Some of this stuff just cracks me up, because you have to say it, and yet it's so obvious, okay? And they might not have gotten much, you know what I mean? But they had to hustle it up. They had to go out and pick some food. They had to go out and do some work and hustle up some food. Their existence was tenuous, right? They had no guarantee that they were going to make it to the next day if they didn't get the right hustle going. Now, this is good for him. This is good for a man. This is good for a human being. We're not designed to just hang around and to indulge our pleasures, okay? So what does a man in this day and age do? He usually works for somebody else, okay? So he's not really working his own land. He's working somebody else's land for compensation, for payment. And he loses in that exchange, he loses the idea that he's working for himself. That, he's working with the dirt and tilling out this meager existence, very little, but it is his by right. He earned it. Okay, so he can go out and do it again. Now, this interaction with the individual, within the individual, this is where the real work is done, is what I'm suggesting. And you still have this option. So I'm going to use a lot of Gnostic-like metaphors because this enables me to, pretend like I'm really smart and that I know what I'm talking about because they're subjective subjects, right? Kind of bugs me when people do that, and yet I do it myself. So how do you like that? Now, what I'm talking about is the idea that your physical body, your metabolism is your garden. It's your domain. It's your kingdom. Your thoughts are like the seeds that you're planting into the soil. And your daily maintenance, your food, your sleep, keeping yourself kind of calm and peaceful and tranquil internally, when it's appropriate. This is like the irrigation. This is like watering the plants, okay? So you're like watering the thoughts. Now, if you're doing it the right way, the garden, the farm grows and begins to produce, fruit, whatever it is you're growing. And if these are good ideas, and if you're taking care of yourself properly, it's valuable fruit. It's the result of your efforts, of your labor, and it's internal. Like, for example, a few months ago, I was living out in the desert. It was a fine house, but I was very far away from places. I was very much alone. I was the only person in this house. And they needed to get all the furniture out of the house. And it was a big house. And I alone, was essentially tasked with that. I got a little bit of help. Not much. And I had to do it like 3 or 4 times. Like I had to take everything out, put it into a giant dumpster, and then got a little help. And then I had to take half of the stuff out of the dumpster, and then I was all alone. So it just went on and on for like a month of just this heavy physical labor, right? And it wasn't fair. And they certainly didn't compensate me in any way, shape, or form, which, that's inappropriate. Like you don't cheat the working man. You don't cheat the person who's the lowest, in the barrel. You don't cheat them. Like if you make a deal with somebody down there to like, here's $20 to mow my lawn, they mow your lawn and they do a good job, you give them the $20, maybe even give them the 25. You don't cheat that person who's down there at the bottom. Never cheat the working man. But they did. And, I started to get upset about it. At first, it was like, no big deal, happy to help. But after a week or so, it was like, this is kind of, low class of them. After 2 weeks, this was like, they're taking advantage of me. After 3 weeks, this was like, I don't respect these people. But at that point, it was like, damn, I'm getting strong. I am getting physically fit. So there was a benefit. To me, just to me, right? You study for a job, you prepare yourself, you acquire the skills, you go out into the marketplace, and you get shot down because, some woman, some minority, some person says, he's part of the patriarchy and you can't help him, right? Yeah, literally. Okay, we have a shortage of air traffic controllers because we refuse to hire white men, right? So this is what we've been living through. So the person with merit and capability comes into the marketplace and they get shut down. And then the person without merit who's playing the victim, who's not going to be responsible or accountable, and they're not going to grow in their abilities, they get the job, right? And they can't do the job, because we're just trying to be so fair. So these are female sensibilities that are dictating our actions. Don't be surprised by this, okay? Simply put, once you have a worldview, all right, and then you justify it, so you've got your metaphysics, then you've got your epistemology, then your ethics are largely determined. So if you say that, hey, the world is this patriarchal, abusive, authoritarian system, okay, that's your worldview, and then you say, the reason why I believe this is because women, are weaker than men, and they basically have to put up with the men. Once you have, just something like that, now the question becomes, well, what do we do? How do we behave? How do we act? And the answer was affirmative action. The answer was, quotas and not letting certain people in, even though they're qualified for the job, and giving the job to people who are not qualified. We're coming out of that. Right? Like entire states are burning down, planes are falling out of the sky, and America itself is losing its preeminence in the world because they're just throwing the money away. So we're coming out of that, thankfully. And this is a large shift that you should be able to recognize in your individual life, slowly but surely. And it's a big deal. Like, it's like, well, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care about that. That's like, no, this is the mindset of everybody that you're working around. I was like, well, I'm MGTOW and I'm all alone. It's like, well, but you're not all alone. You are interacting with these people. And if these people that you're interacting with have rational sensibilities that allow a human being to get ahead based on, hard work and merit, good deal for you, good deal for me. And if they don't have those ideas, we're in a lot of trouble, okay? Because we're not going to play the victim. Okay, so that's shifting now. And I'm very glad for it. So it's just a metaphor. Take care of yourself, work yourself. Okay. A lot of the stories that we pick up, in the Bible, philosophy, literature, they're metaphors. They're, for some sort of a deeper form of knowledge. They're not just individual, factual, historical events. You can tell a bigger story than that. So work on yourself. Take care of yourself. This is what human beings are supposed to do. You've been in a system that's terribly unfair and discourages any sort of individual achievement, accomplishment, pride, dignity, all right? And you've been in a system that favors capitulation, slavish adherence to the rules, unthinking obedience. And we're coming out of that, thankfully, because it doesn't work, Okay, moving on. I know some guys, I'm not talking about MGTOW or anybody online here, although to a degree it applies, and they've just got the idea all messed up in their heads, like what's going on. And actually, this is for a lot of people, right? They're upset. Things aren't working out the way they want it to. So when they come into the world, what they're really doing is they're complaining. They're bringing their problems to the world, and they're searching for sympathy. That's why there's this codependency. You got to be careful who you talk to, right? Who you interact with. Hey, how's it going, man? Oh, this is my favorite song. You got to be careful who you interact with, because they don't care about whether or not it's a beautiful day. They don't care about the song. What they care about is what they want. And they just want to see if you are one of those people as well. Are you a person who lives in this exact moment, willing to give into your rage, to your urges, to whatever, because you're unhappy and you want more? And the deal is let's poison the current environment. Let's start complaining. Let's start telling jokes. Let's start making little gripes and dropping hints about what we don't like and what we would like to have. And let's see who joins in. And let's see who kind of looks at us sideways and is like, yeah, I got to get back to work, right? So that's going on. And I'm sorry, but what you're looking at is a bunch of lazy, sick people who, are all confused in their minds and their thoughts. They're all confused in their body. It's not healthy. It's not functioning properly. And they're going around and saying, good morning, everybody. And what they're really saying is, are you like me? And if you're like me, we can form this kind of codependency and we can work together. You recognize it's a sickness. It's a misperception of what's going on in the world. They've given up the idea of working in their own garden. What they're trying to do is to get other people to do the work for them. And they're complaining. This, too, is sliding away from us. Understand, though, that this behavior, it's fundamental. It's basic to human nature, right? So you put 10 people into a workshop, 6 or 7 of them are going to be like, well, what do we do? 2 or 3 of them are going to be like, look, here's the tools, man. Let's, do whatever we want, right? And I've got some plans. So that's what I'm encouraging, that idea. And, if you come into the workshop and 6 or 7 of the people are like, yeah, we don't do any work here. We think that that's for losers. It's going to be hard, to kind of like be one of the people who does do the work. So I'm also saying that that's kind of turning around. I was going to go into some detail about the personality of these guys because it's really destructive unto themselves. Excuse me. I'm thinking about one guy who is just constantly complaining about how hard the situation is, detailing all of the sacrifices, that he has made. This is kind of like Cain, detailing all of the worthy sacrifices that he has made, but none of them are worthy sacrifices. And so it goes into this self-incrimination rage, of like, why don't I have everything I want whenever I want it? And look at all this hard work and sacrifice that I've done. And now it just becomes this kind of like feedback loop where he just gets angrier and angrier and finds more and more recriminations and more things wrong with the world and the people around him. Drops these subtle little passive bullshit hints, okay, of what he's upset about. I guess I do some of that too, right? But this is like, he's consumed by it, right? I'm thinking of this other guy that I came in contact with who just subjugated himself for everything. He was like, yeah, it's 3 a.m. It's time to go clean the bathrooms. And it was like, it's your turn to clean the bathroom now. I'll show you where the soap and the gloves are and shit like that. And this was constant. You know what I mean? And the guy was like, oh, do you need me to wash your clothes? But he was doing it to the people who he wanted to curry favor with and impress. But there was nothing impressive about him. He was an older, broken down man. And he was acting like he was trying to be this nice guy who was always trying to help people, but he was really just subjugating himself and belittling himself. And what was interesting was that when he would sit down, to just maybe watch some TV and stuff like that, this is the guy who's like so good and doing all this stuff for so many people and expecting you to clean the toilets, right, at 3 a.m. He's watching horror movies of people getting murdered and shit like that, and not just a little bit like, he wants to sit there all weekend long and just watch this stuff. And I'm stuck in a, small room with the guy, right? So I'm hating this shit. Finally, at one point, I've mentioned this before, we're at the gym and he's following me around the gym and trying to tell me, how to lift various weights and things like that. Finally I was cool. I wasn't unkind about it, but I was like, look, I know my way around the gym. Get away from me. You're making me look bad. If I need any help, I'll ask you for it, right? And, he walks away with like, well, I was just trying to help. And he wasn't. He wasn't trying to help anything. He was trying to gripe and complain and bitch and moan and shit like that. And he was trying to justify the fact that he hadn't taken care of himself for his whole life and that the only way that he could kind of like earn value from other people was to be like, oh, do you need your front yard cleaned? I'll do it. And he wasn't capable of doing it at all. So these are just a couple of guys that I've encountered with, character traits that, you should avoid. These were like deeply ingrained too. It was like a lifetime of abuse had kind of like pathologically inserted these kind of like behavioral patterns into them. And, really destructive, really, unfriendly to be around, kind of like an angry drunk, you know what I mean? Who's like pretending to not be angry and hostile, so like there's that edge on these people. They're not sincere. They're not honest. They're not expressing themselves. They're not working in their own garden. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to, come on here and say a few things to you guys. I got some other things I got to get done today. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section below. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, donate. Find my Cash App donation link. Click on it. Please help out the Howard Dare channel. I'm just a man trying to get back up on his feet. That's all that's going on. I'm investing in some things here so that I can create some more content, but I'm being pretty careful as to what I'm willing to, put out here to you. I'm not trying to put out any sort of hate or any sort of reaction, bullshit videos, things like that. I'm trying to talk to the important issues that a lot of the men are facing. So like, share, comment, subscribe, donate, and join me again, Howard Dare, as I plan to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.